And welcome back. The governing party launched its manifesto this past weekend to a packed crowd at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. Among many things, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says part of the ANC's 5-year plan for government includes food security as a priority to help alleviate the pressure faced by poor households. But will the party be able to restore public trust and lead the votes in the upcoming elections? For more on this, we are now joined by ANC veteran Omry Makgoale. Omry, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Morning.
Of what the president of the ANC had to say over the weekend, what would you say stood out for you from that manifesto launch?
I think all the issues they raised are important, and as ANC members, rank and file members on the ground, we can only wish that they will be realized. It means they will have systems in place to make sure that what is in the manifesto can be implemented and can be realized. So that's our wish, at the moment. And as to whether that will happen, we might not be sure at the moment. But if there's a will to achieve those manifesto, items, if there's a will to achieve them, and they work out, all the steps necessary to implement them, then it should be possible to achieve them.
Yeah. Which item from the manifesto launch would you say stands out for you?
I think at the moment, I'm not sure which to identify, but for me, the critical issue, of course, remains the power issue, electricity issue, and the railway infrastructure issue, the logistics, because that, for me, it's a key factor in the economy. Whether you talk of food security, food has to be produced with electricity, and food has to be transported with railway infrastructure from various places. So for me, those two, the electricity, the power issue and the logistics remain the critical issues that should be addressed. And I wish that they should be in a position to take necessary steps to make sure that the power crisis are over and the railway infrastructure, the logistics are running, as efficient as it can be. Those are the critical issues for me. The other issues are really subordinate to that, in my mind.
Okay, so the electricity issue, one of the important issues for you. In terms of the proposal that was made by the ANC through its manifesto launch and delivered by the president, would you say that the plan will actually ensure that we do get electricity, a sustainable supply of electricity? What is it about that particular plan for you that says that that is possible?
Yes, at the moment, I can only express the wishes, because, for us to get electricity right, we have to, maintain our power stations and, the coal-fired power stations that we have at the moment, and make them to generate electricity as much as we need before we can build other power stations, whether we build the gas or the nuclear power stations. But at the moment, we have to get the coal-fired power station running to supply the electricity required to run this economy. So for me, that is the critical part. As to whether it will be done, I can only express my wishes, and so that it should be done. But as to whether it can be done, it will depend on the executive, President Ramaphosa and his team, because they have to make sure they appoint the right people in the right places to achieve, proper maintenance of the coal-fired power station, and to make sure that we generate enough electricity to run this economy.
Yeah. Would you say that housing is a problem as well for the country? That if we look at the backlog of housing that we currently have, and of course we have legislation in this country that says that the rights, according to the Constitution, that the government must ensure that adequate housing is provided to all citizens. Would you say that right now, with the plan that is in place and the proposal from the ANC, you'd be able to achieve that? And also looking again, the manifesto just speaks about build more houses and provide basic services to all. It doesn't say how many houses need to be built.
Yes, I think the housing issue will remain a problem for some time and maybe for many years to come. Because at the moment we have, migration, internal migration from the rural areas to the urban areas, and we also have migration from the neighboring countries into South Africa. So the housing backlog will always remain to be there, and the shacks will remain there for some time. But the important thing is, if people get employed, if we sort out the employment issue, then people can actually build houses for themselves because they'll be having income from the work, from employment. So if we want to address the housing issue, ultimately we have to address the employment issue. When people are employed, they can build houses for themselves. But at the moment, I don't think we can solve the housing, issue. As far as I'm aware, I don't see how we can solve it, because we can't stop the migration from the rural areas into the urban areas. We can't stop the migration from the neighboring countries into South Africa. We can't stop that. It's a continuous process. So what we can do is to make sure that the jobs are there, employment, crisis is relieved, and when people are employed, then they will, build their own houses and find their own accommodation.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, the First Minister of Human Settlements, Moses Makgoale, had suggested that government won't be able to keep on supplying free housing to destitute families. Where you stand currently, do you think that the ANC-led government will continue to do so, or do you think that we need to revisit that particular legislation as suggested back then by Moses Makgoale?
Look, I think it's a wish to think that you can supply all people with houses. It's a wish, but financially it's not sustainable. And this is why we need to maybe revisit that policy and to say that we are going to help people who earn, certain minimum wages or salary, with housing and so on. But at the moment, I mean, the main issue, they should be employed. When they are not employed, even if you give them houses, then they won't pay electricity and water services properly because they are not employed. And so, and you can't build houses, give them houses, and even pay electricity and water for them. You see, so the issue around is the employment issue again, the crisis around employment. Even if you give somebody a house, he must pay for electricity or he must buy a water and all that. So he can't live in a house without, basic services. So I think the issue is employment, but the housing maybe should be revisited. As Comrade Tokyo said some time ago, it might not be feasible to give everybody a house.
Yeah. Let's quickly then speak about corruption, another bone of contention year in, year out. After every election season cycle, we have promises being made around the fight against the corruption. And again, the fight against corruption is in the ANC manifesto, and the party says that over the next 5 years, it will strengthen law enforcement agencies and other anti-corruption bodies, establish the investigating directorate as a permanent entity within the NPA to investigate with investigating powers. But back in 2007 already, we had such an entity that existed, which was called the Scorpion. So the ANC is essentially taking us back to a decision that it took back in 2007 to say, let's do away with the Scorpions. Should the ANC not take some of the responsibility for how we've seen how rampant corruption has become in the country because of that 2007 decision?
Yes, look, I think it's correct to acknowledge that that was a mistake from our side, to the scraping of the Scorpions in 2007. It was a mistake from our side. And like every honest citizen or honest party, we should be in a position as the ANC to acknowledge where we committed mistakes and correct them. So we have the right to correct them, I believe. And if the leadership of the ANC now sees the need to reintroduce the Scorpion, it's a good thing to do. So when you have committed a mistake in the past, nothing stops you from acknowledging the mistakes and correcting them. You must have the courage to acknowledge the mistakes and correct them. And that's the right thing to do. So I think it's the right thing to do, to correct that mistake and maybe re-establish a form of Scorpion, again.
Okay. And then finally, let's look at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Again, the ANC president saying that there are those who are saying that no person implicated in state capture corruption should be on the provincial and national list of the party. And there was a proposal, of course, that was made by the ANC Veterans League as well, that those people shouldn't be included. However, the party's NEC has decided that actually let the Integrity Commission of the party decide whether or not the person should be removed. Was that the right approach for a party that is saying that it wants to fight corruption, yet amongst its ranks it has people implicated in state capture, even on the top 7 of the party, and mind you, in cabinet as well?
Yes, look, on that issue, I'm one of the veterans, a rank and file member of the veterans, who is campaigning that all the people who are implicated in Zondo Commission, VPS, solid waste, Limpopo Waterworks, Freedom Dairy Farm, all those people should not be in the candidate list. I'm one of those people who campaign for that as a veterans, league member. And we think that it is not good to have anybody who is tarnished in the candidate list. Never mind the reasons or the issues they are putting across. We don't think it's the right thing to do. But if the NEC, the current NEC, decided that they will leave it to the Integrity Committee to decide that, it's still okay, but the Integrity Committee doesn't have the power to remove people from the list, as far as I know, because the NEC still has more power than the Integrity Commission. And so, in my mind, I think that is not good enough for fighting corruption. But we'll see what we can do within the Veterans League to make sure that that message is carried forward, that those implicated should be removed from the candidate list. Those implicated should be removed from the candidate list. We don't need them in the... We've got enough ANC members across the length and breadth of the country, from the Cape Agalas to Messina Bay Bridge, from Durban to Port Moresby. We've got enough ANC cadres and members who can replace them in those offices, and we need people of integrity and people who are clean. Yep. We can't afford to have people who are tarnished there, We can't.
So what do you say in your door-to-door campaign to supporters of the ANC or people that the ANC is trying to woo over about those people that are implicated in state capture, who make it onto the provincial as well as the national list of the ANC?
I think we have to be honest and tell the people that we are fighting to clean up the ANC candidate list, and we hope that most of those implicated will be removed from the list. And of course, if they are not removed from the list, it will be unfortunate for most of us, because then it's difficult for us to convince an ordinary citizen when they see somebody who is known to be extremely corrupt in the candidate list. It's difficult to convince an ordinary citizen that we should have that person in the list, and so it would be unfortunate. But we hope to persuade and the people and tell them that we are fighting internally to clean up the candidate list.
Sure.